Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you today for another amazing Spider-Man art retrospective video. Today we're looking at issue number 36 of The Amazing Spider-Man, featuring a brand new villain that we haven't seen before, so that'll be fun. Of course, as we start out with every video, I want to thank everybody who has been watching these and everybody who's been subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much for your support. If this is your first time here, I do have a playlist of all these videos going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, where we look at the art of every issue and discuss the pros, the cons, the techniques used, everything that brings these stories to life. That's the whole thrust of these videos. And so if you haven't seen those, you might want to pause here and go back and check out some in the previous playlist. But again, thank you for all your support. I appreciate it. Without people watching the videos, I wouldn't be doing them. So thank you so much. So again, yeah, we have The Amazing Spider-Man number 36. An interesting book. It's got some ups, it's got some downs. And without further ado, let's jump over to the comic and let's take a look together. Okay, so here we have The Amazing Spider-Man number 36, and this is the cover. So we've got this new villain that was previewed at the end of the previous issue, number 35. There was a drawing of him, but nothing else was given, just that this was a new villain for the next issue. And here we have him. Interesting. I think the cover is good. I think I like action. I think you can never go wrong with a white background on a cover. It makes the imagery very vibrant, really pop out. So stuff on a white cover, stuff on a black cover, always, I think, are impactful in terms of the art that's placed on top. Interesting that we have another new villain, and this new villain is looks like kind of wearing a silver and purple costume. It's been a while since we brought this up, but I've talked about this in the past, where a lot of Spidey's villains are costumes have or feature secondary colors, and why that's important. So real quick, just to review your color wheel here. So you've got your primary colors as red, blue, and yellow. These are colors that you cannot make by mixing two other colors together, right? These are the prime three colors that when you mix them all together make every other color. So in between those, when you mix two primary colors together, you get a secondary color. So in this case, red and blue makes purple, or blue and yellow make green, or yellow and red make orange. So that's why you see a lot of your heroes traditionally are costumed in primary colors. So Spidey is red and blue. Captain America, of course, red, white, and blue. Doctor Strange, red and blue. Thor, red and blue. Wonder Woman, red, yellow, and blue. Superman, red, yellow, and blue. We can go down the list over and over again, right? But you use primary colors. There's a purity to them. We recognize this in a subliminal or subconscious understanding as a viewer. And then the secondary colors, again, tend to be villains. And Spidey's Rogues Gallery has a lot of them. The Green Goblin, green and purple. The Lizard, purple or green skin and wears purple pants. The Scorpion is green. The Sandman wears green. Doc Ock is often featured in green, and sometimes in very early issues we saw him in purple. So just this idea of the juxtaposition of your primary color hero with your secondary color villain. Again, just a psychology that people understand without really consciously recognizing it. So great way to show off a villain. The only thing that I don't, well, I'll get into, there's two things. There's the main thing that I don't like about this cover is the fact that the villain is punching Spidey in the jaw and nothing is happening. So as we get into the story, we'll learn more about the character and his superpowers. He does have powers. But the fact that Spidey's leaping at him in the air and that he's punching him right on the jaw and nothing's happening, there's no reaction, there's no nothing, it makes me say, well, what kind of a threat can this guy be to Spider-Man? If he could just take a punch to the jaw, he's going to grab him. That's the end of the story. There's not nearly as much drama as if he was punching him and Spidey was recoiling from the punch. That makes you go, what's going to happen? Maybe he will beat Spidey, right? Or get away or whatever. So to me, it just feels like a lack of drama. The other thing is this, the trade dress, and the trade dress has to do with all of the words, your Comics Code Authority, your title, all that stuff, and all this lettering. So here it talks about the meteor. When falls the meteor? So you know this is a new villain. There seems to be, this is, I guess it's supposed to be sort of like a solar system, giant solar system model type of thing. So you go, okay, maybe this guy has something to do with space, and I would assume that this is the meteor, right? Maybe that's the name of this villain. This, by the way, this book was published in 1966. So when you think about sort of, or it's still very early in terms of space race kind of stuff. And so the idea of kind of a villain called the Meteor isn't out of place. Today we would call that hokey, maybe a little corny, but back then I think that would be perfectly reasonable. So you go, okay, maybe this guy's called the Meteor. Okay. Now we cut to the interior page. We have one of our splash pages that I talk about all the time that I don't care for because it takes away a page of the story. But here we have a scene that we're going to see later in the issue. And we have the heroes here. Again, good. It's a good pose. There's a lot of good stuff to it. I'll go through all that. But here we have, again, in really big lettering, when falls the meteor. So I go, oh, and they're up in the air. This guy must be the Meteor. Nope. If you come down here, you find that he is called the Uncanny Looter. And you go, what? So emphasizing the whole meteor thing so much makes me feel like that's that guy's name, when in fact he's called the Looter. So I don't like this aspect of the cover. Mention the Looter. The threat of the Looter, or can Spidey stop the crime spree of the Looter? I mean, talk about a kind of a corny name, but again, at least emphasize it instead of being this little tag down at the bottom when everything is emphasized as Meteor. So that seems very silly to me. Now, I do want to point out real quick between these two pages, the Looter costume, which I think is pretty interesting. It's definitely unique. So he has this sort of helmet. We'll see in the comic, it's definitely round. It's got some very interesting kind of eye holes, but then it goes up, and then the bottom part is like a cloth. And then there's this real cool bit where it's almost like it's a vest, if you will, with, I'm assuming, like a belt. But then so they miscolored it. Either here he has silver pants, here they're purple. This makes me think that this should have been silver. But the boots, so there's this stripe that goes down the leg and has a cutout for like the calf area. Again, I think that's really interesting. There's also, I believe, stripes down the arms that we don't see on the cover here. You can kind of see a hint of, well, that might just be a highlight or a rim light to separate the black shadow from the building. But again, just a real interesting costume for sure. And we'll see it more as we go through. The thing about this splash page that I like, the poses are very cool, very action oriented. I think it's clear they're fighting up in the air in space. Now there is some real drama. Is Spidey falling? You can tell great perspective on the buildings here, that we are up very high because of how dramatically they converge down into a single point. So our vanishing point is below us. So that tells us these buildings are really, really high. Plus the small detail helps do that as well. So we're far away from them, and we know buildings are very big. So again, emphasizing the height, the danger, the poses are good. Overall, very, very good. The thing I don't like is this backpack. So it is part of the story. You'll see where it comes into play, and it makes sense once you've read the story. But when I haven't read the story, I don't know what this is. Is he connected to a crane? Is he connected to a parachute? Like, what is this funky thing? There are some other ways that we could have done this and sort of still had this scene of them fighting in the air, but been more clear about what is going on here. The last thing I'll say on this page is look how buff Spidey has gotten in the past couple years. Again, this is 1966, so Spidey has been in publication for a few years now, and I just want to show a quick comparison of an earlier version from an earlier issue of Spidey and what his build was like. So we're going to cut to that, and you can see here is a much slimmer, thinner, I guess spider-like character compared to, we'll go back to the issue we're looking at today. And here we have a more buff, bulky Spider-Man. So I don't know if that's just a natural progression of Steve Ditko's drawing style. When you draw the same character over and over, it's easy to make slight changes that you don't realize are happening over time, because you're not going to sit back and look at it. In a retrospective like we are, you're looking at it as just one image at a time. So maybe he didn't realize how he was drawing him bulkier over time. Maybe he was. Maybe that was part of it. There was a point in the story a few issues back, if you remember, where Peter had to go buy new clothes. So maybe the idea was, hey, he's getting older and we're going to show him physically changing as he gets older. So that might be part of it too. Anyway, it's just an interesting note, I think. If you take it just at face value and you read and you don't compare to what came before, you might not have realized how much muscle Spidey has packed on over the past couple of years. So in these first few pages, there's not a ton of stuff to talk about from an artistic standpoint. The story is that this guy who's kind of a failure at life, who dreams of being a great scientist, even though he's not that smart apparently, finds a meteor. Nobody will finance his investigations into this meteor. He believes that it's the secret to where life in the universe came from. And so he cracks it open. There's trapped gas inside. He cracks it open, and when exposed to the gas, he gets superhuman strength. That's the long and short of the looter. But from an artistic standpoint, the pages are fine. We do see here in a lot of this issue, Steve Ditko does use a lot of foreground issues to frame up what's happening in the story. So here we're in a lab, so you have a bunch of stuff in the foreground framing the action. Here, this is a bank, and we're looking through the glass inside, and you have, it's hard to tell with the dialogue, but there's a window, an arched window, and of course the word loans in front of the glass. This guy's on the phone, and so now we have, again, more equipment and the meteor in the foreground. Same thing here, this equipment that's holding it, and we see it again down here. So for whatever reason, there's an unlimited way as an artist to depict a scene. We are the set director, the props master, the director of photography. We are all these things that you see in like TV and movies, all in one person drawing. So you could pick literally any angle you want. It's just interesting that Steve continued to put these foreground elements to help frame what's going on behind it. So just part of, everybody has their own tics and their own preferences, and I think that's just one of his. It's something we see a lot in these issues and something he likes to do. So this guy is kind of testing out his newfound powers and figuring things out, and we've got, of course, your very traditional sort of creepy villain pose of if he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it, right? So now he's got to figure out what he's going to do. Peter is back going to classes. It's been a while since we've seen him actually in school. And so here he is trying to interact with people, realizing, hey, I've, kind of been so busy, I haven't had time on the social end of things. And so maybe I can, get people to warm up to me a little bit. And it works for a minute there. But unfortunately, this young lady who invites him to a party just recognizes that he's smart. And they're like, boy, I'm sure glad to have a smart guy come to my party and not all these, jocks. And of course, Peter is still sort of traumatized by his high school days of being teased for being smart and unathletic. And so he kind of reacts badly and says, thanks, but no thanks. And so everybody, again, including, most importantly, Gwen Stacy, who's been off and on trying to figure Peter out, they all take a very negative look at Peter. And so anyway, that's the subplot. That's the Peter story going on at the moment. There's a little more of that going on, but now we have the looter and we see him for the first time. So he identifies himself as the looter. Here's his costume. And as we can see, so it looks like the cover is miscolored. So on his costume, he's got this silver or white vest, the purple shorts and belt, and these big stripes that go down the front of the leg to the knee and then wrap around the calf. So real quick, we'll go back. So I think, let me zoom in a little bit. This is clearly a coloring mistake because you can see here, so see the inside shadow, but you can see that shape on the leg and here that should have been white. And then this should have been purple. So interesting. It makes me wonder if maybe whoever did the coloring on the issue on the interiors was not the same person who did the coloring on the cover. So again, it's just a very interesting design of a costume in terms of the wraparound on the boots, the vest, this sort of, again, unique. You can see it's sort of a round helmet with a cloth part underneath. Again, kind of a neat, here's a better example of it over here as he's taking it off. Cool helmet. So just kind of a different sort of thing. Artistically, what I want to talk about here is this tangent. So let's talk, I've talked about it before. Let's talk a little bit about what a tangent is. So again, we are, as artists, we're creating an illusion of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional plane. One of the best and easiest ways to do that is to overlap things. So I'll point you to the panel right above what we're talking about here. So we have this girl here, and she's talking to Gwen. And so this girl's arm is in front of Gwen. We see the building is also behind her. So she's overlapping these things. That tells us visually that this person is in front of this and of this. There are other ways to do it through perspective lines. So things going back into the distance, size relationships, color, all these things can help you create that sense of three-dimensionality. Where it goes wrong when you're drawing on a two-dimensional surface is when you get a tangent. And that is when two lines of things that should be overlapping. So we'll take my hand, we'll take this hand is in the back, this hand is in the front. We see that they are overlapping and they are crossed so that you can see the overlap. If I go like this and I line them up perfectly here, obviously this is a slightly flawed example, but the idea is which hand's in front. If they're not overlapping, but the lines of your hand line up just perfectly, it can be difficult, especially in a two-dimensional example. So what we have here in this fourth panel is we have a hand in the front of the corner, and that is the looter's hand. It took me about 3 or 4 rereads, meaning looking at it, and I'm taking notes on this. So I'm being, analytical about this art. It took me several times before I realized, oh, wait a minute, this hand here, that's a hand. And so the reason you lose it is for a couple of reasons. It's this line. So our brains fill in the blanks for us. Our brains create the picture for us and kind of piece in information that's not there. So you see this guy, you see his leg. We know about how thick this leg is. We come over here, we see this leg, and we assume that this line would go down right here, right where this top of the finger is. And then as well, this line with the belt kind of lines up exactly with the point of that finger. And if you're not paying attention and you're reading through and looking, and you're not looking for it, it might be hard to pick out that this is 2 fingers and a thumb of the villain. So that's one of the things to look out for as an artist are tangents. You don't want things on different planes to line up perfectly because it will flatten out the image and you'll lose details. So anyway, one of the ways that you can get around this, sometimes you can't avoid it. One of the best ways to do it is I would have gone in if I was inking, and I would have put a much, much, much thicker outline around the hand in the front, and that thicker outline will help pop things as well. So just a technique that you can use if you are also an artist and draw your own comics. So wanted to point that out. Otherwise, nice camera move, nice down shot here showing him leaping over the teller stations and then stealing the money. And then I like this lighting on the top. He has a gun that is like, he calls it a dazzle gun, I think. Dazzle light or dazzle gun. And the idea is it's just basically like a super giant spotlight. We actually, people have those now. But in 1966, the idea of a handheld light that's so bright it could, literally blind people, unheard of, right? So I like the lighting, meaning that because the light is shining out the front of this gun, everything behind him, including his back, all that is going to be solid black. And then over here, Steve Ditko has used very minimal lines, meaning that the light is washing everything out. And so really what you're looking at are the shadows. So he's pointing the light over to this side. You're going to have ambient light in both directions. So everybody who's away from the center is going to be shadowed. So again, some nice lighting effects there and a neat use of that. And then lastly on this page, the montage. So the looter's on a crime spree, and it shows you what kinds of stuff he's done. He's robbed like bank vaults, safes, armored cars. Gives you a concept of how powerful he is, right? If he can rip the doors off armored cars or safes or bank vaults, this is a pretty powerful guy. So that means maybe Spidey is, in for quite a fight. Some very nice swinging poses here. And again, this is a little subtle thing here that you can talk about tangents and stuff like that. If this foot wasn't overlapping this building, or the knee wasn't overlapping this building, and things, lined up, like maybe the top of the building lined up right with his shin, that would be a tangent. And you'd want to avoid that. But this is a very, very nice, subtle, small overlap that just puts Spidey right here in the foreground with us. So very nice. I like this one a lot. The crossed hands swinging. There's no shortage. When you go through these old Spidey comics, Steve Ditko breaks out as many different Spider-Man swinging poses as possible. So I applaud him for that because, over the years I've drawn Spidey not in a regular comic per se, but, pinups, commissions, things like that. And coming up with a new pose that you haven't seen before is a challenge. So Steve Ditko is coming up with new poses to put Spidey in as he's swinging through the city in every issue. So congratulations to that. So the villain here, he has realized that there's no more gas in this first meteor that he has. So his idea is he's going to steal more meteors so that he can get more gas so that he can continue to be super strong. And of course, of all places, Peter happens to go to a science exhibit about outer space. Gwen Stacy's right behind him, of course, because why wouldn't they be? And she is, so it's obvious just from a story perspective. Gwen is interested in Peter. I think at one point she says something, we'll see it, where it's like he's handsome or rugged or something to that effect in terms of his looks. But she's interested, but she's not going to make the first move. She's just going to put herself in a position where Peter can see her and talk to her. And so that's the game she's playing. Again, it's of the times. It's 1966. Attitudes were different. Who approaches who. So fair enough. This is her. Plus, it's been established that Gwen Stacy is super, super pretty, and everybody is always fawning on her. The men are coming to her, and so that's what she expects. So she expects this from Peter as well, but Peter only has eyes for science, at least at the moment. And who knows? He may not have even seen Gwen Stacy. Yeah, he may not have even realized she was there. So there's another meteor, and here comes the looter to steal it. So, of course, Peter's got to go change, and Gwen is, I guess, upset that he's running away. Where I don't know. You expect this college kid who's a science major to go, as this guy is literally punching cops left and right and throwing people around. She expects Peter to go punch him out. Okay, whatever. Very interesting. Of course, excuse me. We do have more of these foreground elements. I do like, we talked about that, and this is really nice where people are fleeing and the looter's running through. So that's a nice framing technique there. Spidey comes in, they start trading punches, and the looter's no joke. Spidey says he's maybe even stronger than Spidey is. So should be a good fight. They trade some punches back and forth, and the looter starts using distractions to get away. So this page here is another nice element using camera moves. Talked about this before. We refer to it as camera moves like it's television or the movies. And the reason we do that is it's just a single language that people can understand when you're trying to direct imagery. Things like long shot, wide shot, close up shot, down shot. There's a 180 rule about where you move the camera. We've talked about that before. So again, as an artist, I am the director of photography. I can put the camera anywhere I want. The camera is essentially the reader's eyes. So I can't move the image around. I can't move you as the reader around. I can move the image so it feels like you're moving around with them. So we've got a nice rotation there of angle from Spidey getting punched to Spidey throwing the punch. So that's a nice switch of the camera there. Then we have a nice top-down view. So that's a great image and a great reaction to the punch. So real good sell, nice power. He's striding through. His whole body is counterposed so that this leg's going forward, his left leg's going forward, his right arm is going forward, and then his left arm and right leg are going backwards. That indicates energy, motion, power when you're drawing. So you never want to have somebody throwing a punch and leading with the same leg. That's weak. You want to lead with the other leg and twist that body. Again, great reaction. He buckles the guy's knees. He's thrown back, arm up in the air. Terrific. Here's the cover. So we see Spidey leaping through this solar system model as the guy's running away. So note, Spidey's not being punched in this one the way he was in the cover. Now, if you use this as the cover, it makes the character look really weak. So I don't know that this is a great cover either. I might have done something along the lines of maybe still having Spidey leap through as the looter is, stealing the meteor fragment, but not actually running away. That might be an example of how you could have done it to keep both figures strong on the cover. Spidey's really punching the heck out of him, and the looter says, all right, never mind, I'm going to go to my dazzle gun. And again, nice little effect here. The light is coming straight at us. So as a viewer, Spidey would be completely black or almost shadow because he's blocking the light. But all these other things, all these other people over here are just indicated with these lines because the light has blinded us, the viewer. So that's a really nice technique there. What he doesn't understand is that Spidey can just close his eyes and use his spider sense to track the danger. Unfortunately, again, we get another distraction and Spidey has to save the day. So again, not bad stuff from an art perspective, but other than what I pointed out, there's nothing extraordinary that we've seen yet. So we'll keep moving through. Of course, now Peter has to reappear and Gwen is mad at him. That's just it. And how could anyone so manly looking be a coward? So apparently she likes Peter. She thinks Peter is manly looking. So, okay. So there we go. And then, so now, he's the looter is, he doesn't have a meteor. He doesn't have a new source of this, space gas that gives him his powers. So he's going to try again. And of course now Gwen, after what happened at the exhibit, Gwen is kind of dissing Peter in front of everybody. He doesn't know why. So he's like, all right, whatever. Let's see here. Again, pretty good stuff. This is a good pose. Nothing that we haven't seen before. So nothing crazy. I'll point this out. I point it out all the time as we look at comics. There's a lot going on here. So whether that's the plot is very dense and there's a lot of story points that we have to hit, or Steve is trying to keep the pacing fast. There's a lot of grid work in this book. You can see here's your 6-panel grid. These a little bit bigger panel here, but again, lots of grid work in what we call talking heads, which is just, I got to get out this dialogue, get out this exposition to help move the story forward. So a lot of that in this issue. The looter comes back. They're moving the exhibit. He times it just right. And you see now he's got this funky backpack and he's grabbing the meteor. And of course, Spidey swings in to stop him. This part made no sense to me whatsoever. So Spidey swings in. The first thing the looter does is throw the meteor fragment at Spider-Man, which he just kind of slaps away. That's the whole point of this entire issue. This guy needs that meteor fragment like he needs oxygen. He's done everything he can to steal it twice. He's scouted the place. He has an escape plan. So the backpack we see has this giant helium balloon. That's what this big circle is, and the tank is the gas. So he has an escape plan. Why wouldn't you just hold the meteor to your chest, light the balloon up, and take off? I mean, he already thinks he's going to escape. Why throw the meteor away? That's the whole point. So, seems very, very strange to me. I get it. Maybe he needs a distraction. This is where maybe, again, there's a bunch of stuff you could do. He's apparently, it's a little hard to understand what's happening. He's punching these two guys who are moving the meteor fragment. So he's punching them. That's not his hand. That's the hand of the mover. That's the hat of the mover. So those guys are knocked out. Why not fling one of those guys, those unconscious guys, fling them at Spidey, and then he's got to catch them. That's a much bigger distraction. Now you take your meteor fragment, you fly away. It doesn't change the story. Spidey's still going to chase after him, which he does, and then battle him up in the sky. So we see here's kind of your the elements of the cover. He's hanging on to this sort of this balloon harness. Spidey leaps up and webs himself to the balloon, and they're fighting. And then, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with the fight. The fight choreography is perfectly good for a couple guys who have nothing to brace themselves on, and they're up in the air. Spidey's using his webbing. The webbing slips off the balloon surface, but he's able to grab the looter and just cling on to him and starts pummeling him. And nice big panel here of Spidey just punching him out, but he knocks him out. And he takes off his mask and is like, and you can see he's all kind of beat up. And he goes, I don't know who this guy is. And there we go. And that's the episode. That's the issue. He releases the gas from the balloon. Guy floats down. He uses spider signal to alert the cops. Cops come. Boom, you're done. Coming next, the menace of the rampaging robots. So at least we get an idea of what's happening in the next issue. But so there's no explanation here. Did the space gas wear out? Did Spidey just finally pummel this dude into unconsciousness? There's nothing. So whether he got him here, I mean, I suppose the idea, I guess, is like, what if, if we go back when they're originally fighting, what if Spidey had gotten in a few more punches? Maybe he just would have knocked him out here halfway through the book. He didn't have to do anything fancy. He didn't have to use any of his scientific knowledge that we see sometimes. He didn't have to come up with a new strategy. It was basically, I'm just going to follow you and just beat you into submission. And you go, okay. I mean, so for me, it's a very underwhelming conclusion to the issue. He just needed to get enough punches in. That's it. Okay. And that is the end of the issue. So there we go. We'll come back over to the desk and we'll wrap things up on issue number 36. So as I said, that's issue number 36 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Brand new character, the Looter, who gets his powers from interstellar meteor gas. Interesting design, interesting costume. Even at the beginning, kind of an interesting motivation. A guy who's failed scientist, can't get any money for research. He feels very strongly about what he thinks he can prove with science, and gets an opportunity to finally, get some power, get some money. Of course, he goes about it the wrong way, and he's summarily beaten to a pulp. We've got the parts with Peter and Gwen. I'm not a big fan of this cat and mouse game. I didn't like it when it was going on with Betty Brant, where 1 minute she's hot, she's cold, she loves Peter, she can't understand him, she's rejecting him, she's mad why he's not pursuing her, and we're getting into the same territory with Gwen Stacy right now. So again, not for me. In terms of rating this overall comic, I would give it a 5 out of 10. Not my favorite. I don't think there's anything super exciting. There were a few good moments artistically, that you would look and go, that's a great image. That's really cool. We've seen ones that were way more impactful, things that you could really learn from, where I point out and go, hey, if you're a young artist, look at this, because this really is how you do it. To me, this was kind of pedestrian. If this was not part of my collection, I don't feel like I would miss a lot. So there we go. They're not all winners. It's not a loser. It's 50-50, right? So for me, 5 out of 10. If you feel differently, leave a comment here in the video. Let me know what you think. What would you rate this comic as? Is it a 5 out of 10? Is it, for you, is it one of your favorites? Is it an 8 out of 10? 9, who knows? But it'd be interesting to hear. So feel free, leave comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up, and other videos that you're able to go check out, from art tutorials, book reviews, drawing material reviews, you name it. If you're into comics and art, this channel's got a lot of videos for you to check out. So subscribe, check them out, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week with more Spider-Man. Thanks.